Hello, everyone. Welcome to IMTS Tech Trends Podcast, where we discuss the latest manufacturing technology research and news. I am the Director of Technology, Benjamin Moses. I'm here with
Stephen Lamarca, Technology Analyst.
Steve. Today's episode is sponsored by AM Radio, but let's get to that in a second. Let's talk about SHOT Show.
SHOT Show. Okay. You and I, ever since we realized we had a similar interest in firearms.
Yep.
You have always, presented to me, Steve, let's find a way to get to SHOT Show. We've wanted to go to SHOT Shows for years now, probably since we both started at AMT.
Correct.
And it's like, there's going to be manufacturing present at SHOT Show. Sure, it's the firearms industry and not manufacturing industry, but there will be manufacturing technology present and on display. Their products of the advanced manufacturing technology will be on display at SHOT Show. Plus, this is an interest of yours and I. We have to go.
Correct.
It's now 2022, probably 6-7 years later, and we're finally approved to go. Well, I am. Ben didn't apply because you have a scheduling conflict.
Overlapping, yeah.
So I'll be going solo, but that's okay because part of SHOT Show is called, well, the first day of SHOT Show is actually a Tuesday, but Monday is a day of SHOT Show that is by invite only called Industry Day at the Range.
Right.
Which is exactly what it sounds like. They bring all of the industry people, the media people to the range. Excuse me, they don't bring all of them. It's by invite only. We didn't get an invite to that. But that's okay because you can't make it this year. One of my goals is to secure an invite this year, as well as see manufacturing technology on display. And then we'll get you going next year.
Yeah.
And we'll have invites to Industry Day at the Range. I've really mentioned everything that I need to about SHOT Show. We want to see all of the manufacturing technology that is being implemented and used in the firearms industry, and that's what we're going to be highlighting. A key reason why it is more important this year or next year, 2020, since it's early or late January 2023, is because this year, after SHOT Show, this year the U.S. military announced that it had adopted a new general issue service rifle across all branches, like the SIG Spear or something like that. I forget what M designation it is. Doesn't matter. Frankly, it's a more advanced and evolved AR platform rifle,
Right.
in all honesty. However, one thing that's very special about it, one thing that's very cool from a teenager video gamer perspective is that all of these weapon systems that will be issued to soldiers and Marines will come standard with a suppressor.
Yep.
So it's not just SF Special Forces troops that are going to be getting cans on their rifles, but all soldiers will get suppressors or silencers with their rifles. Here's where we come in. The new trend in the firearms, small arms defense industry is that the best suppressors are made using metal additive technology.
That's true.
We want to see it.
You got to see it in person.
And I even told Dayton about this yesterday. Once I was excited, he was one of the first people that I saw when I got the email back saying, "Hey, you've been approved." I'm like, "Yes." And he was like, "I think I have an idea what company they've contracted to make the cans." Because the new rifle is made by Sig Sauer, which is a German-Swiss company that back in the day was more of a Swiss company, then became more of a German company, and now it's like an American company. It's like, I have no idea what they are now. They're a global conglomerate. They're at least transparent about it, unlike car companies. They're all over the place. And Dayton was like, I've got an idea who's making these suppressors, and I've got an idea of the equipment they're using to make them, which is really cool. So if anything, maybe he should go too, but whatever. I'm going to be going this year. Going back to how we're going to get an invitation to Industry Day at the Range, which is invite only. And I found out yesterday, womp womp, that they stop accepting invitations. Like you can get an invitation as early as like I think July 1st.
Okay.
In the year before a SHOT Show,
Right.
and as late as September 30th. So we're outside the window.
Right.
No matter who I like, mosey up to and get tight with before the end of the year or before SHOT Show, it's not going to count.
Yep.
It's going to have to count towards 2024.
Right.
But guess who we're tight with? And when I sent my application to be accepted for a press pass to SHOT Show, they ask for, because I don't actually have media credentials. Like there's some like press certificate to say that you're authentic press or whatever. Instead, I had to like call them, be like, hey, I've done this.
Right.
I'm not from the firearms industry or the outdoors industry. I'm from the manufacturing industry. But here's the closest that I've been. I sent them episode 1, season 1, Road Tripping with Steve at the American Precision Museum,
cool.
which has on display the birth of the American manufacturing industry, and automation and machine tools and the term machine tool.
Yep.
But it was all for the mass production of small arms for the U.S. military.
Yep.
And interchangeable parts that they were going for, hence precision and not accuracy. And that's like the closest related thing that I have to the firearms industry.
Yeah.
They saw that, they loved it, they approved me.
Nice.
But going back to the American Precision Museum, American Precision Museum is supported, has 2 partners in the firearms industry, Savage Arms, at least 2, Savage Arms and Daniel Defense.
Wow.
That means I've got 2 companies to go visit while at SHOT Show this year to be like, hey, let's talk manufacturing technology. And then, half hour later, by the way, can I get an invite?
2 massive
And
companies.
can you get like my boss an invite too, so we can go to Industry Day at the range next year?
That's awesome.
We'll try to hype you up.
Try
to like give us something with manufacturing technology.
Exactly.
We don't want to upset anybody. We understand why you might want to, but we don't want to upset anybody. Send us something cool with manufacturing technology. We'll report on it in a positive light that won't get you guys in trouble or in any hot water, won't get us in any hot water, and everybody will be happy, and then we'll be back in 2024 January to shoot guns with you.
There's a couple of reasons why I like SHOT Show a lot for manufacturing, right? So we've been talking about like firearms, so pistols, rifles. You just talked about the new military.
That new can.
And the new suppressor related to it.
The rifle's cool too.
Yeah, it's fine. It's a new caliber. So along with that, right, you have manufacturing for the firearm itself, right? Subtractive manufacturing. Most likely they're from forged materials or from wrought materials. But then you get into the advanced manufacturing where, to your point, the most optimized flow path can be made using additive, right?
Right.
Using subtractive is very difficult. So suppressors is like 2 years ago, the volume of suppressors is so much different than where it is today.
Yeah.
And part of that is the acceptance of additive, that it is a viable solution for that in a production environment. And along with that, so you have firearms and the suppressors. The advancements of materials for that whole ecosystem has come a long way. Like, so they're not using wrought steel probably. They're probably going to titanium because of the overall size. And they've gone to a different caliber. I think they're using 6.5.
They're using 6.8 by 51.
Yep. So
it's a 308 necked down
and
pressured up.
So yeah, they're using the bimetal casings, right? The
I think so.
Steel back and the brass housing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you have True Velocity that's competing against that with a full polymer case. So you have the entire ecosystem of material competition within the firearm industry. But the manufacturing side of that too, you have completely automated lines for forming, machining, pouring, and assembly. Which is completely fascinating.
And 80,000 PSI is generated by that cartridge of pressure, and they're going to suppress it. like if that doesn't speak to, like, it doesn't, you don't need to know Calc 3 to see the math on that clearly points to advances in manufacturing technology. Because, 10 years ago, well, just a few years ago, actually, 5.56 was supposed to be capped around 50,000 PSI, and we're almost doubling that now. It's wild. It's
and the confidence to run those pressures in those harsh environments.
And knowing when it fails, exactly where it's going to fail. Another thing that you touched on, the FBI just accepted and adopted and approved, probably not in that order, approved, accepted, adopted, a new suppressor for their forces.
Okay.
And it's a flow-through design, meaning it can only be additively manufactured.
Nice.
And what a flow-through design means is silencers or suppressors were conventionally made in multiple pieces with like forming technology, like they're pressed and probably a little bit of conventional subtractive, like milling. But a suppressor in the past, and when they were invented, was just, a accurately manufactured internal combustion engine's muffler.
Right.
It's a reflective muffler with baffles inside it. And while that works for a single or maybe a few shots, it doesn't work for full auto. And the FBI wanted a full auto rated suppressor, so I wonder what they are up to. But they recently adopted this suppressor that has a flow-through design, which again can only be manufactured using additive. And a flow-through design it's nothing new, but it's a 5+ year old design, which is more recent than other suppressors. But this flow-through design started with a company called OSS, Operator Suppressor, or something like OSS Suppressors, and that was the original company name. And they started using subtractive, eventually adopted additive manufacturing to make these flow-through designs. But they described it best as in flow-through suppressors are like a rocket engine in reverse.
Sure.
And if you think back to how rocket engines are made now, they're only made... Traditional manufacturing is out the window.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Right.
They're never going to make rocket engines with traditional manufacturing ever again. They can only be additively produced. And a rocket engine reverse is a flow-through suppressor.
Yeah.
These can only be made with additive. This is the advent of implementation of additive. I've told you people before, I'm going to say it again. Additive has already emerged. Stop calling it an emerging technology. What we need to implement it and integrate it into the rest of the manufacturing supply chain or workflow is designed for additive. Rocket engines, flow-through suppressors is the best and first like the spearhead example of design for additive, and it's the advent of the integration of additive. This is something beautiful to witness, whether or not you agree with firearms or not. This is big.
Are you done?
I promise I'm done now.
The last thing I want to talk about is it's the subtlety in shift in optics. I'm a big fan of clean glass on a rifle, or and then most pistols have gone to red dot sights on there, which is great. I enjoy a red dot, but also backup iron sights was always valuable.
Sure.
Battery's gonna die, but the interesting shift I've seen is packaging electronics into the optics. So one of the things with the new rifle is advanced targeting. So they're able to identify the target, and the reticle will tell them what the bullet drop should be by putting a mark on the screen itself. So some of them are using advanced screens. So it's the packaging of electronics plus the sensors, range finding, getting barometric information, and then being able to display that to the user in the optic itself. So the advancements of all of that electronics into something that they can see through, it's completely fascinating to me.
And it's borderline. Well, it's not borderline. It is also implementing automation to a conventional soldier.
Right.
Which is wild, because not only are some of these optical systems do auto lasing of the target, meaning it range finds for you and tells you how far and what kind of bullet drop compensation you need. But in some cases, they even turn the dials of the optics for you. And it was never adopted. And frankly, I don't know how well it works, but there was a time where the optics was even integrated into the trigger group, and it didn't let the user pull the trigger until they knew that they were going to score a hit, which Sounds like automation to me.
It's fascinating. So yeah, I'm very excited to see, as an end user, the progression towards that, but the manufacturer and be able to package everything so someone can actually carry it.
And it's technically not like an automation system pulling the trigger.
Right.
You're pulling the trigger. The automation system isn't letting you pull the trigger until you can score a hit.
We'll get more on that towards the end of the episode.
Oh, yeah, we will.
Steve, can you tell us about our sponsor today? Speaking of additive.
AM Radio is the new podcast from Additive Manufacturing Media. Join editors Pete Zielinski, Stephanie Hendrickson, and Julia Hyder as they share stories of companies succeeding in 3D printing today, talk about emerging trends, and discuss the future opportunities and potential for AM in the context of the larger manufacturing landscape. New episodes are published every other week. Subscribe now on Apple or wherever you listen to podcasts. Tune into Additive.
There's one thing I've always missed of a manufacturing facility, and I enjoy hearing it when I get back to a facility, is sound of chips flying. You've been cutting some chips on the Pocket NC 2.0. How does it feel? And tell me about it.
Dude, it feels so good. And starting about, I'm glad you mentioned the feel, because from a visual standpoint, you look at the new Pocket NC compared to the old Pocket NC.
Yep.
They look like they're still the same machine.
Sure.
The only thing that looks different is the B table. There's a new button on it. It finally has a proper e-stop on it and not just like a play pause.
Right.
Proper big red e-stop on it. And the other thing that looks different is the UI. I think I've touched on that in a previous episode. It's universes better.
Right.
I don't need to talk about it again. It's so much better. But the feel of the machine, it's like a totally new machine when you're cutting.
Okay.
The new work holding, I mean, I knew it was going to be good when I first saw the 40 taper ER40 collet in the B table, so you can run bar stock inch wide. I forget what the maximum size is. It's like a little over an inch, but because inch diameter bar stock is like the most common and easiest to get, I decided to go with that first. It perfectly zeros. Like, you don't need to comp for like work holding offset.
Right.
You don't need to comp for a vise sitting on top of the table. Like, everything's zeroed for. You can home the machine and just start cutting away.
Cool.
And you don't need to do any measurements. If you want to get fancy, you can measure your tool offset, and it does that automatically for you. Again, touched on that in a previous episode. But I can't emphasize enough, like, you have to experience how much better this feels compared to the last one, and how much more solid the work holding is. You can't experience it until you're actually making the chips fly, because you get so much more feedback now in the best way possible. Like, you get more feedback, or lack thereof. You get less feedback when you're cutting it right.
Okay.
Like, doing a climb cut with what I was doing was noticeably quieter than doing a conventional cut on when pocketing to make this shot glass. But if I had to compare it to anything, it's like, obviously this still isn't like, a Fanuc Robo drill or even, a Bridgeport knee mill, or my particular dream machine, a Mazak Integrex i100 ST. I'm not ready for that. That's like 1,000+ cc motorcycle.
Right.
The last Pocket NC, the last Penta machine we had was like a 250. Now I'm at a 400.
Nice. That's a solid.
And it's amazing. It got all the features.
Yeah.
It's got ABS. Stuff like that.
And I do like how it sets us up for the future. We've been talking about, setting up the test bed as a factory. And, we ship the robotic arm down to the tech center in Mexico, Monterrey.
Yeah.
So Carlos and his team and Danielle are using it nonstop.
Yeah.
So we're looking to rebuild our entire system and it's a solid upgrade going from the 1.0 to 2.0.
Right.
And we need to get back to getting a robotic arm to further explore automation. And it sounds like being able to cut. So we were using some pretty solid tools also. We're not using like really small end mills. You were using like a 1/4 inch end mill, right?
Yes. 1/4 inch end mill.
Yep.
3 flute, corner radius. But what's really important to me is that I'm not from the industry, and so I don't have experience on machines before this.
Yep.
I'm a little bit self-taught with, some guidance from you and other people in the industry that have helped out where they can to get me started. But, again, we don't make parts here at AMT. But now that I have some experience machining, it really is a pleasure working with this new machine and how easy it is and how much more precise it is getting chips flying. But like what's going to be really awesome is when, I get some more students in here from like Marshall High School, from like their robotics team that want to make parts for their competition robot or whatever. They've never touched or maybe even seen a machine tool before.
Right.
This is going to be so easy for them to use,
Yep.
even if I'm not there, which I will be. But like, even if I'm not there, like it'll be easy for them to figure it out without any guidance.
And I do so you did cut this part in the manual mode.
Yes.
Right. So basically feeding it and using the controls. And I do like the ability and the user interface. I think that's an important key takeaway for someone with your amount of experience being able to grasp how to work the machine, basically independent.
Yeah.
So I think we've come a long way in terms of human machine interfaces, and we've talked about that quite a bit. It's more intuitive now, where you don't have to understand just putting in straight G code. That's cool and all, but you have to know G code. So, but being able to have a better machine interface where you can slowly get to that, and then getting into CAD CAM in the future is a very interesting progression.
Yeah.
Awesome. Let's talk about some articles, man.
Let's get into it.
I've got a first one. We got an article from AMT Online that talks about a recap of IMTS and the progression of additive. We've been talking about additive quite a bit, and this is a good summary of kind of the overall landscape of additive.
Mm-hmm.
We talk about metal for firearms, but this one talks about the 6 innovations from the additive manufacturing pavilion at IMTS. And so I got a bunch of the cool bullet points, and I think the last one is where it's connecting more with the production side of additive. The first one is flexible additive, subtractive, inspection hybrid systems, basically all-in-one systems. And you're seeing that a little bit more. Basically, you want to be able to get a finished part out of the machine.
Yeah.
And I definitely see a lot of those hybrid machines, being able to multitask, right? So if you don't have a printing job, you don't want that expensive machine being sitting there. So I thought this interesting. Print with high viscosity resins for parts with the expanded functionality. So the need for resins is growing a little bit more, and the drive for the underlying technology. Low heat metal bonding. I think there's a lot of potential there, but it's, I think, niche market potential, but we'll see. Lower cost laser printers for small companies. And that's why I think, expanding like the lower tier manufacturers so they have the capability.
Yeah.
So it's not just SIG partnering with one company, right? So SIG can partner with 3 tiers below, and that 3rd tier can get into additive also. Closed loop printing for tight specs, mainly for soft polymers. Closed loop is definitely progressing a lot more. One thing on the metal side we're seeing on the closed loop is thermal distortion and porosity. So being able to detect that real time. So there's still ongoing debates. We've talked about this ongoing, and we're curious to see how the firearm industry is going to get past this, is the qualification process for a finished good through additive process, because of the different processes, different techniques. Are they going to be as strict as like aviation is in aerospace? So we'll see. And the last one, fast printing for high precision production grade tools. So a very interesting summary. There's a bunch of more detail that Dayton gets into.
I'm surprised that that's a Dayton article, because while those are key points,
right?
Those are good points. Those aren't the really fun takeaways from the pavilion.
Sure.
Those are really good ones, and they're very important.
Right.
But I feel bad for Dayton, because he was obviously restricted from what he could say in his own internal dialogue.
Sure.
Because there were definitely some other things that we saw in the additive pavilion that people, told us about,
right?
Who worked at these companies, that we don't have the liberty to speak on yet. I mean, for example, and I won't name names, but like there is a Formula One team that, didn't get off to the best start this year, but ended up running away with it and absolutely dominated the Constructors' Championship.
Right.
And it's because all of their internal components in their engine are 3D printed.
Wow.
And very well 3D printed.
Yep.
And I got to meet the company and the person who's behind it, and they didn't want to share too much information, but like with about the particular Formula One team.
Sure.
But ever since they started using them, they just ran away with the Constructors' Championship, and Max Verstappen. Oh. Anyway, yeah, there's some. What's cool about additive still, and why even though I keep saying that it's not emerging, it's emerged. This brings me back to like, okay, this is why they're still called an emerging technology, because we can't be as free with as much of this fun information yet.
I think we should change their title to emerging advantage. I don't think people have fully understand how to take advantage of that for their end use. And that's a very good scenario where they found that one thing that the one design that matches their optimal path, and they will achieve that optimal design through that process. I think that's the missing link that a lot of people are missing, is that, yeah, they're focusing on manufacturing side of it, but it's the design that needs to be pushed and figure out how to get value from additive.
Yeah. It stinks that we still have to be so secretive with this information. And I know from as many conversations as I've had with him, Dayton does have to be secretive with a lot of this stuff. But if you look at the 2022 Formula F1 constructor standings,
right,
the team that ran away with the constructor championship and just utterly dominated, it is because of AM. And it is a shame that the additive company's team that enabled them to run away with it, their name isn't plastered all over the car the way it should be.
It'll happen. I mean, we've even talked about
eventually it will.
Like the F-35 is the fighter jet is being retrofit with a new engine. Everyone's like, oh, that's a lot more money, but they're able to get like 40% more power out of it, 20% more fuel efficiency out of it. So but the value that we're getting out of it.
I'm just saying that, like, being that F1 is like an
advertising company.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. It is an advertising company. But the fact that, like, let's say next year, the other teams figure out what it was that made that other team just run away with it, and they start implementing that technology. By the time that the company that was responsible for 2022's Constructor Championship is able to come out about it and at least get some recognition, 2 to 3 other teams are also going to be implementing that technology. And it'll be okay, because that means tighter racing, hopefully. We are talking about F1. There's never tight racing.
No.
But
a future episode, and we're seeing this a lot more, I think we'll have probably a future episode specifically to automotive and additive. We're seeing it obviously on the supercar side, but then slowly trickling out. F1, there's a lot of trickle-down technology from Formula One into production. So while I agree with you, the competitive space is going to be annoying for a while until the rest of the competition can catch up. But 7 years from now, Honda, Ferrari, Mercedes will eventually see some of that trickle-down technology into production cars, which...
If we're not all electric by then.
Fair point. Let's get into one of my favorite topics, lean manufacturing.
Lean manufacturing. Okay, so speaking about cars, so this is a good segue. I came across not an article, but a blog post from a gentleman that worked in the automotive industry. Specifically, he was a CAD designer in the automotive industry, and he definitely had a pretty good tenure with Toyota and Volkswagen, the 2 biggest producers of automobiles around the world.
Right.
I believe he's also got other experience with other companies like GM and Honda, but the big ones, Toyota, Volkswagen, and then Honda and GM after that, and another company that he designed for in Ohio that he spoke very highly of, even though I don't think he mentioned the name of the company. But this blog entry talks about, mass production versus lean production. And then design for mass production or mass design versus lean design,
Yep.
and how it comes down to these companies' products, how you can differentiate the quality and the craftsmanship and the value of the final products that go to consumers is also extremely defined by not just lean versus mass production and design, but also the leadership and the management of those companies.
Right.
And it's really fascinating listening to this guy talk about, he uses Volkswagen as the example for mass production versus Toyota for lean production. And he gets into the Japanese leadership.
Okay.
And where, he separates the leadership between Western management
Right.
and lean leadership.
Sure.
So it kind of implying that Western companies don't imply lean, even though when I mentioned that Ohio company that he worked for earlier, he did say that this company from Ohio was incredible at implementing like lean or Eastern
Yep.
leadership traits and qualities, which is really cool. But it's everybody, especially people that say stuff like, be American, buy American, and that wonder why, some products, whether it's German or American car, like, their economy cars don't sell as well as like for whatever reason, Japanese economy cars are just worlds better, more reliable, and just sell better
Right.
than anybody else's economy car. It makes sense when you look into how he breaks down the management.
Nice.
Where he like accuses Western management of being like, there's one boss that has a vision,
Mm-hmm.
and he has that vision. He doesn't care what other people's visions are.
Right.
And he dictates the teams under him to do the work that adheres to this vision.
Right.
In other cases, there's a manager in Western culture that tries to manage to the best of their ability and be a leader, but is constantly shot down by the executive management above them.
Yeah.
As for lean leadership,
Mm-hmm.
is that manager is trusted to do what they feel is right for the company.
Yep.
And when that manager, their selected team, they get to handpick their team.
Yep.
And each member of that team gets to run away with what they want to do to align with this person, with the leader's vision. And they're very proud of what they do.
Right.
And the leader, like when they finally come together for a final product, like a car or whatever,
Right.
everybody in that company refers to that product as their leader's car. Like they
that's
call
cool.
it like Takumi-san's car in like Japanese culture. It was just really cool. And like in Western culture, we don't really see that.
Right.
I mean, we see that for things like, like Jay Leno's Garage will highlight, the key lead designer for like the latest
Right.
Mustang
Right.
or the latest Corvette. That stuff we can get passionate about. And those things are, you see the passion because it's a successful car. They're successful products. They're well-made products. But like the person who was like the lead project manager, like not even designer or anything, but project manager for like the last Focus or Fiesta. That person doesn't want their name in public knowledge. Not that those were bad cars,
Right,
but it's just they weren't led with passion.
Right.
The lean production allows for passion, and I never thought of it like that before. And it had to be spelled out for me in this article, and it's really eye-opening. And I think I do think everybody should read this blog post, because not only is it manufacturing related,
Yep.
but anybody that is either a follower or in a leadership position that cares about being like either a good manager or being a good employee should read this.
Yeah, there's a couple of key takeaways that kind of connected the dots with me. So in lean manufacturing, a common interpretation is it's a bunch of tools. We use these tools to do something where it's the underlying power of lean manufacturing is the power, the delegation of authority and power, right? So taking the vision and enabling the person at the bottom totem pole to say, this doesn't look right. We need to do something about it, right? So being able to enable that person to basically work with the higher level of autonomy to achieve that leader's vision. And I think that's a underrated thing that we keep missing over and over again. And also how the process goes further upstream, right? We say lean manufacturing, but it goes further from the worker on the floor to the manufacturing engineer to the design. So it's an entire ecosystem to say, can we achieve this person's vision of the car or whatever through the entire life cycle? So, if someone says this part isn't fitting properly or there's concern about this, that goes all the way back the entire upstream as far as possible to solve the problem. So I think it's a really good article, and
it's incredible.
It talks about the nuances that we are missing off, and that kind of holds us back a little bit of achieving, what a great company could be.
And it's just really sad, like, when you think of, I realize we're getting into, yesterday was election day for state primaries or whatever. I don't know. I don't follow that stuff enough. But like, in the U.S., we love to say that, oh, we're the freest country in the world. We've got so much freedom. And yet we have like the most stressed out employees and like workers, and like the anxiety in the U.S. is like higher than ever. And it's because like, I think, and this article helps point it out, it's that workers and their managers, not senior managers, but their immediate managers, like, are given like this, they're not given the freedom that the country gives them. Their employers don't give them that, and it's weird. I didn't take that into the tangent that I wanted to as well as I could have. You need to read this blog post, this blog entry, because I sound like a babbling idiot trying to explain the beauty of it, and it really is worth your time.
Let's get into cybersecurity.
Okay.
Speaking of trust, there should be no trust in cybersecurity. So there's a concept of zero trust, which actually I do like a lot in security. But in this one, we published an article on building an advanced cybersecurity plan. So using the NIST cybersecurity framework, we've been expanding on the key elements of that and talking through how does that actually convey to the manufacturing floor and our manufacturing equipment providers. So this one talks about network resource configuration management. Once you get past the title, basically making sure your entire network infrastructure is up to date, from routers, switches to the end device. We've talked about the machine tool itself being on Windows XP, Windows NT.
XP would be nice.
So, things that are end of life are end of life for a reason. To be honest, even within our own building, we're running into some of those issues where we have servers that have physically hit end of life, and also software wise where we're kind of maintaining it, but if something happens, like the software is not kept up to current security standards because it's at end of life. No one's supporting it. So it's not just warranty issues, right? There's patches and things like that have to keep that software and that hardware current. And once you hit that, it's no longer valid. So this kind of talks about the importance of all the different devices through the entire network and how important it is to keep those devices current, both physically and software-wise. And it's important. And the big takeaway is, as part of the CapEx plan, it's important to take a look at your IT infrastructure to say, where are these devices in terms of the life cycle?
Yeah.
And do we need to change these?
And what's really cool about that is, I get a lot of people like to stick with, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. and I understand that. Yeah. And if it does break, why don't you try to fix it first before replacing it? But so we just had our wireless network entirely replaced, gutted and replaced.
It was more than that, but yeah, it started with the
more. Well, that already sounds like a lot as it is, and I don't know enough about it. But like, our IT department, our IT team, did an incredible job.
Right.
They started at noon last Friday, and they had it done by 10 p.m. that night. So nobody had to work during the weekend. It was incredible. They crushed it. We have the greatest IT team in the world, and we're not outsourced. They're ours, which is like another cool thing. This is why I keep like saying that, like, if you care about cybersecurity, cyber physical security, you need an IT department, and a good one. Don't outsource that stuff. Like, you need that stuff internal. Anyway, Sean, like our star IT guy, Sean's like, Steve, do you want to check out the new server, the new servers that we had installed?
So clean.
And I'm like, let's see it, dude. Because Sean is like hyper specific and OCD about cable management.
Yeah.
So I knew this was going to be a thing of beauty.
Yeah.
And the guy before him, Chris Nelson, the server that he set up was a thing of beauty. So it's like, it can't be that much better.
Oh, that's
It can't be that much better. Oh, it's better. It is so beautiful. It's like, when you get to go to a car show, like not a car show, but like a concours d'elegance, and you see a vintage racing Ferrari from like the 70s, and you see the beautiful white ceramic coated spaghetti nest of exhaust headers, 12 tubes collecting into 2 outlets.
Yeah.
That's kind of what it was like seeing all these cables up there. And I was like, wow, that is a thing of beauty. But how does it perform? And it was like, Steve, let's put it this way. Our last network across the entire floor, across the entire office for AMT was 100 megabits.
Yeah.
100 megs up down.
Yeah.
Or megabits.
Right.
Because megs may mean something else. I don't know enough about the units of measurement in the IT world. 100 megabits up down, which is super fast.
Right.
That's not super fast, but that's great. That's
fine.
all you really need.
Sure.
And it's like, this worked great. Why did we replace it? And it's like, look at the performance now. Now it's like anywhere from like we measured it on different devices, and like I think the wireless network, which is throttled, is 500 megabits down and 1,000 up. I was like, why does my cell phone need 1,000 up? But anyway, and then he showed me, now check out the work network, because that was Optimus, which is our phone network for everybody's personal mobile device. Then for our actual work wireless network, it was like 1,000 down and 2,000 up. And I'm like, this is insane. Like, did we really need this? And he was like, well, the last one wasn't broken, but like, Sean put it into perspective brilliantly for me, and it totally made sense when he put it this way. How long do you expect your current cell phone to last? And I'm going to be happy if I get two years out of it. If I use the cell phone that I have now for 2 years, I will consider that a good investment. Yep. I know there's a lot of Apple nerds that like to get the latest iPhone every 3 months when a new one comes out, and they even pay for the iPhone Forever upgrade program. So when a new one does come out, their payments stay the same. They just go to the Apple store, trade in their old one, they get the new one, and they've signed their life away to do so. Like that, I get the fun behind that, but like, it's like, yeah. So like, if you're happy if your phone lasts for 2 years, why would you expect your wireless network to last longer than that?
Right.
Like, you should be upgrading the network every 2 years. And I was like, whoa, that totally makes sense. And now AMT is essentially on 5G.
Yeah, and there's a couple of advantages to that. So like the configuration. So there's a lot of things that are limiting our capability. So we do have like a gigabit coming in terms of network access, internet access, and we weren't achieving that full bandwidth. So freeing up all that hardware, both from the wireless adapters to the switches, allows us to actually get to what we're paying for. That's the underlying problem is we weren't getting what we're paying for, which is frustrating. 'Cause, like, if you look at standard packages, right, we say that is standard package, but our aging hardware and configuration was limiting us. Yeah. So being able to refresh everything, and also the tools to visualize the system. So the aging hardware had older interfaces, had different devices. We went to a unified system, and being able to actually see all the devices on your network, that's a huge upgrade. So it was
that was really cool. He showed me that too.
Yeah, the topology map of
Yeah, it's
network
all like
structure.
linear right now, and he wants to change that. But
Of
like,
course.
Sean, we don't deserve you.
Steve, I do want to get to these 2 articles, but I think we need to save those for our next episode.
We'll save them for next time.
All right. Can you tell our audience where they can find more info about us?
amtonline.org/resources. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
I'm going to go clean my bike.